Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday morning service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. I'm Tom Rosiello, the minister of the fellowship, and it's wonderful to be back with you this morning and physically back in San Miguel de Allende. But even when I was away, thanks to the wonders of this Zoom technology, I felt as connected to this congregation as if I were here. Wherever you are this morning, and I know we have members and friends all over the US and Canada, as well, of course, as here in Mexico and beyond. We're so glad that you're here with us. Welcome to what I hope is or is becoming your spiritual home. This Sunday is the official launch of our endowment fund and is the culmination of a great deal of thoughtful and committed work by the Endowment Committee. The members of that committee are Steve Singer, Chair, Karen Woolhouse, Finance, Tricia Singer, Secretary, Eleanor Goodwin, Joanna Kafrowski, and Steve Story, Donor Relations. I want to thank them for their hard work on this project and their continuing commitment to make this endowment a reality. We're so blessed to have their talents working on this project. Before we begin our service, we'd like to share some announcements with you, and we go to our president, Dan Neuspiel, to do that now.
Good morning. I'm Dan Neuspiel, president of the UU Fellowship Board. Welcome everyone, wherever you are. We invite you to look at today's order of service for announcements of activities and membership information. The same information appears in our weekly newsletter, along with interesting articles about our busy fellowship. If you're not already on our mailing list, please send a note to Denise at the address in the chat box, and we'll add you to it. Have you checked out our awesome redesigned website, UUFSMA.org? There's lots of new features, including a members-only section with a growing photo directory of our members, with lots of interesting information on their backgrounds and passions. Check it out. Please be aware that we in Mexico set our clocks back next Saturday night, October 25th, 1 week before the US. Our Zoom breakout discussions after the service are great places to reflect on this service with old and new friends. Just stay connected after the music ends, and you'll be randomly assigned to a room. If only 1 or 2 people show up in your room, just sit tight for a minute and I'll move you to a larger group. At the end of the service, we'll post a question to kick off your discussion. And now a few thoughts from the COVID-19 task force, a group of health professionals and care team members with expertise we hope will be helpful during this pandemic. Cases and deaths are still rising in San Miguel and in many other places. If you haven't yet received your annual flu vaccine, please do so soon. They're now available free at the public health clinic at La Lejona if you haven't yet arranged to get it from your personal physician. Please keep up safe practices and remember that we're privileged to be able to maintain social distancing and other measures to protect ourselves. Many of our Mexican neighbors must work or live in high-risk situations in order to survive. So please don't be complacent in taking undue risks. There'll be an article in tomorrow's newsletter on safe practices when you decide to leave the house. So check it out. Be well and be safe. And now back to Tom.
Thank you, Dan. You know, if you stop to think about it, as individuals, we are all beneficiaries of the love, the caring, and the generosity of those who've come before us. As a fellowship right here in San Miguel, we too are the beneficiaries of the talents and the labor and the generosity of those who've come before. And even as a faith tradition, we too owe much to those who came before us. Today, we lovingly and gratefully take up where those who came before us left off. We receive what they have given us, and we hope to pass it on even better than how we received it. Today, we recognize it is not only our time to serve the world, to care for each other, but also to prepare a legacy for those who will come after us, to keep alive the flame they lit. As a reminder of this continuity, we again light a chalice flame, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. With a spark from the flame that burns in each of us, I will light our common flame. And after I do so, I invite you to join in the unison words of chalice lighting from Antoine Saint-Exupéry, which will shortly appear on your screen. In a house which becomes a home, one hands down and another takes up the heritage of mind and heart, laughter and tears, musing and deeds. Love, like a carefully loaded ship, crosses the gulf between the generations. We light this chalice for all those who will come after and for whom we prepare the way. The idea of a light that burns within each of us, the idea that within each of us is the light of the sacred, the good, and that we have the ability to share that light in ways that brighten the world and make it a better place, is a powerful metaphor embedded in many religious traditions. It is a profound choice we have. Will we give of the good within us? Will we let our light shine? Or will it be covered up and will we refuse to do so? You know, our light may be small, but it's amazing where its rays can reach. And for those who generously share their light, it shines on long after they are gone, and even upon the future generations that they will never meet. Please join now with a diverse, multi-generational virtual choir in singing one of this fellowship's favorite hymns, This Little Light of Mine.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This
Please join us in reading together our spoken covenant, which should appear on your screen momentarily. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
We now enter into a very sacred time in our service, a time when members and friends share the joys, the sorrows, the concerns that they are experiencing at this time with their community. If you have a joy, sorrow, or concern that you'd like me to share in next week's service, please email it to me. And if you have one that you have not sent in this week but would still like to share, you may type it into the chat column now. Our first candle is from Diana Amaya, who writes, I have a joy that we finished paying for our house, no loans, no debts, and it's 90% finished. We're already moved in and we have a lot to do in the garden, but we're happy. This is a candle of gratitude for the work of all the volunteers that come together and work with the staff to keep the programs of this fellowship going, and especially in this time of COVID where these connections are so vital. Another candle of gratitude from Judy Rosenthal, who writes, I don't want October to pass without a formal UU thank you to Barbara Erickson. She has been tirelessly working to register voters with Democrats abroad and to help them get their votes in the mail for months. We owe her a lot. We continue with this theme of voting. This is a candle of concern over the voter suppression efforts that are taking place in so many parts of the United States. It's also a candle of support for all those who are working tirelessly to register voters and make sure their votes count, including many from our own faith community working with the UU Vote Project. Susan Del Carmo would like to light a candle for Jake and Jamie Highland, a couple burned while escaping from the cold spring fires, who are in serious but stable conditions. The Highlands, who lost their 1-year-old son Yuri in the fire, have been at the Harborview Medical Center since September 9th. They were found along the Columbia River by the State Department of Natural Resources employees, and after abandoning their truck and fleeing the fire. She was pregnant at the time and also lost her child. Please hold them in your thoughts and prayers, and all those that continue to suffer from the effects of the fires and the hurricanes and the other natural disasters which have befallen us of recent. COVID cases continue to rise here in San Miguel and throughout Mexico and most of the US. We light another candle of concern for people letting down their guard and attending large gatherings or otherwise not observing safety precautions. This candle is also one of get well wishes for anyone suffering with COVID and one of remembrance for those lost and sympathy for their family and friends. This final candle is for all those joys, sorrows, and concerns held deep in our hearts, but which remain unspoken this morning. As members of this fellowship, we support each other. We receive from and give to each other. We share with each other the good times and the struggles. This is indeed what it means to live together in beloved community. I invite you now to reflect upon this as we together sing the simple refrain which will now appear on your screen.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and by this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and by this we live.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Steve Singer, Chair of the Endowment Fund. But I want to talk to you for a minute about the weekly collection. For many years, at least 50% of our operating budget has gone to support the NGOs throughout the San Miguel community. Most weeks, when the collection basket is passed, the service leader talks about one or another of the organizations we support. And during the last few years, once a quarter, all the funds from the weekly collection basket have gone to support a specific partner or project not initially anticipated when the budget was passed. We call these collections our Blue Plate Specials. This year, largely due to a drop-off in weekly collection basket contributions and the increased cost of conducting Zoom services, the fellowship's operating budget has had a shortfall, and we're struggling to pay our bills without dipping significantly into our reserves. Even so, this year we have still contributed the entire amount promised for outreach in our initial budget. I would like to suggest that today we pretend is a Blue Plate Special collection. And this time the cause is us. The fellowship needs your help to make up at least some of our operating losses due to the pandemic. So during the upcoming 90-second pause in the service or immediately after the service, please go to our website or on the donate link in the chat box. The website is UUFSMA for your donation. You may use PayPal or any credit or debit card to donate any amount. Thank you for opening your heart and being generous today. The offering will now be collected and very gratefully received.
It promises to be a fine night.
We will now hear reflections from 3 members of the fellowship, Dave McDougal, Margo Johnson, and Bill Dalsimer, on what the fellowship and the endowment fund means to them.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank Steve and Tom for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you about donating. It is one of those rare topics which can promote bipartisanship instead of debate. And I believe it is a topic that requires, at a minimum, a 2-step process. Should I? And if yes, to whom? A statistic that always comes to mind when thinking about giving is that lower income people generally give a larger share of their income to charity than those with higher incomes. I don't want to initiate a debate about why that might be. What it tells us, I believe, is that wealth is not a key factor. One gives what one can when one is able. The second decision is much more difficult, especially when living in 2 countries and well aware of the terrible circumstances/needs in various countries around the globe, especially in South America and Africa. In Canada, as well as in the US, local charities such as the Food Bank, homeless shelters, women's shelters, cancer research, the Heart Institute, the local hospital, etc., are all vying for support. Fundraising takes all forms: dances, lotteries, contests of all kinds. For those of us who still spend a lot of time at home, we have responsibilities within our own communities. We are all aware of the needs in countries around the world. Charities have active programs in Canada and the US to generate funds for programs that help the endangered, the impoverished, and those discriminated against in countries much less fortunate than our homelands. And then there is San Miguel. Cindy and I have been spending our winters in San Miguel for more than 10 years. Friends had mentioned the UU service. One sees the articles in the Atención, and a couple of years ago, we spied either an interesting topic or musical group, and we attended. Since then, we have rarely missed. This November to April season will unfortunately be the exception. Why do we now attend? Many have written excellent descriptions of the services, and suffice to say, we find the UU Fellowship is very rewarding from a personal point of view. Equally important is the UU commitment to give a minimum of 50% of all monies collected to specified charitable causes. I don't know this, but I would guess that this is much more than most churches these days are able to do. This policy not only provides money to those in need, but it raises awareness of the UU attendees to charities that may resonate with the individual attendee and open the door for that attendee to further assist directly with personal support or further donations. The UU Endowment Fund is one way to ensure that this valuable support of charities continues. To sum up, it is important and satisfying to know that the UU members understand the local needs and charitable organizations very well. While each of us must make up our own minds on the allocation of our available funds, the endowment fund of the UUs is an attractive option in supporting charities in San Miguel, and I believe can be used to ensure that the UU Fellowship in San Miguel continues to be rewarding for both its members and the community in the future. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Margo Johnson. When I moved to San Miguel 3 years ago, I had 2 sisters. Today, I have 11 more. You may be wondering, how in the world did that happen? I didn't come to San Miguel looking for a larger family. My goals were to make friends, enjoy this wonderful city, and challenge my comfort zone. When I joined the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in San Miguel, I was exposed to remarkable people, smart, creative, caring individuals filled with experiences and ideas and willing to generously share themselves with me and with this Mexican community. It was a safe and challenging group, and they accepted me exactly as I am. 12 fellowship women most of us not knowing each other, decided to form an affinity group under the auspice of the UU. We began meeting weekly to share our experiences, our hopes, our secrets, our joys, our deep sorrows, while nourishing each other as best we could. We named our group Mis Hermanas, Spanish for my sisters. And now, a year and a half into this trial sisterhood, we are fast friends, committed and determined to be a supportive family to one another. When we learned the fellowship was establishing an endowment fund, we wanted to be part of the organization's future. So we pooled our financial resources, each contributing what we wanted in order to give forward so those who follow us will have a spiritual home where they can expand their friendships and share their talents. I have found kindred spirits in this fellowship, people with whom I connect and enjoy. And I want this special environment to continue for those who come after me, whether we give to the endowment fund individually, as a group, in cash, with future bequests in memory of a loved one, or because we believe the UUF of San Miguel is benefiting this community. My sisters and I hope our donations will allow future generations to discover the same types of relationships we have found. Maybe their families will get bigger, just as mine has.
Thank you for inviting me to be with you. My name is William Dalsimer. I was first exposed to Unitarianism in a Sunday school class held in the basement of an old and rambling 3-story Charles Adams style house, home to the North Shore Unitarian Society. This new and struggling congregation was founded by 4 families in 1941. It exists today in the form of the 600 plus member UU congregation of Shelter Rock in Manhasset, New York, a well-endowed congregation. In 1953, the Society received a generous but unexpected gift from Carolyn Veach. That gift experienced miraculous growth, but that's another story. In 1959, a portion of the fund was set aside by the Society for its own internal needs, and the bulk of the fund was dedicated to the Veach program. The Veach program provides long-term core support for social justice organizing in the United States. This program of faith in action has become a leader in progressive philanthropy. Last year, it continued to grant from its income an astonishing $12 million to progressive causes. I have been an active member and supporter of this fellowship over 10 years. Like you, I believe that the principles we stand for and the work we do in this world is critical and must continue. My support for an endowment reflects my wish to create an investment fund guided by our spoken covenant and UU principles, which will carry us into the brighter future we wish to see for all humanity. As I revised my will this year, I thought about my legacy. Yes, to my children and grandchildren, my natural beneficiaries, but also yes to an endowment that will create a fund that will assure our congregational support of social justice issues in San Miguel and beyond, and will be relevant to changing times and needs. Just as the Unitarian Society of my youth created a legacy for the future, may our fellowship build a strong and expanding resource for both our members and friends, and for the world community at large for generations. Please join me by investing in the future of our fellowship by supporting this important initiative through your annual pledges, contributions, and bequests to our endowment fund. May it be so.
Thank you, Dave, Margo, and Bill, for your reflections and for the many gifts that you each bring to this fellowship. And now please join in singing hymn 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life. The words will appear momentarily on your screen. I connected with this fellowship 13 or 14 years ago, first as an occasional attendee, then as a guest minister, and now for the past year and a half as your minister. It has been wonderful to come to know and be part of this unique Unitarian Universalist congregation. Now, in some ways, it's very much the same as the congregation in Massachusetts that I served for so many years. People are people with similar needs for community, for support in difficult times, for spiritual growth and inspiration, certainly for the desire to promote justice and to help those in need. Congregations are always creating and recreating themselves, but I think this fellowship is at a very, very exciting point in that process. The congregation I served for many years just turned 335 years old and has 10th generation members. It has a Paul Revere bell in its 100-foot steeple, and some people still hold deeds to the pews that their ancestors had purchased in 1848 when the present meeting house was built. Great people from the past live on in the stories and in the gifts that they've given to the church. It has many long-standing traditions. You know, the annual harvest fair that has been happening at this time of year, for instance, for the last 150 or so years. As its 37th settled minister, it was wonderful to be part of a great tradition. I guess you can say that they are a very mature congregation, And in that respect, the UU Fellowship of San Miguel is very different from the congregation where I am Minister Emeritus. You know, many of you know, I'm sure, that in our tradition, when a teenager is transitioning to become an adult in our congregation, we have a wonderful program that we offer, and we call it Coming of Age. Well, just as a child grows into an adult, a congregation matures as well. This is what I believe is happening here, right now. We, as a fellowship, are coming of age. And personally, although I love being part of a great tradition, I'm truly excited to be serving a congregation in such a different place. In some ways, the ministerial skills and experiences that I bring are even more needed than they were in that wonderful, mature congregation. I find what this congregation, the UU Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende, has done over the last 33 years or so of its history to truly be amazing. I hope you read the articles in the newsletter about our Magic Fellowship describing all this. From an incredible social justice program to profound engagements with issues of our time, as well as those timeless issues, those issues of the spirit that affect all our lives, from caring for one another to caring for the greater community. We have been caught up in the doing, focusing on the here and now. Our bandwidth has been pretty full, and our thinking mostly short term. You know, this week's service, this month's committee meeting, this year's budget. But now we have come to a point where we can, and I think we must, think beyond just the needs of the moment and think about the future and about ways to ensure that the things that have become so important to us will be available to those who come after us. But more than that, we are a voice of liberal religion here in the middle of Mexico. We are a place that opens our doors wide to welcome those whom other religions find unacceptable because of who they are or what they do or don't believe. Of course, what we do for the greater community is so important, but so is just being here. Having a vibrant UU congregation in the middle of Mexico is important, not just for us, but for the entire community. And I believe it is important that it thrive and grow and shine the light of its principles and values here in Mexico, even after we're all gone. It's important to do the work of justice now, to care for this institution in the present. But we have now reached a point where I believe we can and we need to take a longer view. So I'd like to share with you a story that illustrates what I'm talking about. It's going to take us away from Mexico and into the world of English universities. You probably know that English universities are made up of many different colleges, each with their own dean and fellows, their own traditions, and their own great hall. The Great Hall is often the center of the life of the college, where the faculty and the students alike come together for dining and all sorts of gatherings together. Students, faculty, and alumni all take great pride in their college, and in particular, in their great hall. This story is about a great hall at one of the colleges at Oxford University called New College. Now, that name can certainly be a little bit misleading. You see, New College received its charter in 1379, and it's believed that their great hall was already built at that time, probably constructed in 1367. It is a beautiful hall with massive oak beams in its ceiling, pegged together to support the great span of roof. The ceiling is considered to be a masterpiece of medieval joinery. As such, one interested student decided to write his thesis on the joinery of this period and went to the attic above the Great Hall to examine how that structure was pieced together. What the student discovered was that the huge beams were infested with powder post beetles. He reported his discovery to the board and they called a meeting. Now there was great concern among the board members. Something had to be done right away. Could beams this size of the ancient timbers even still be available today to replace them? And if they were, what on earth would they cost? Would they lose their great hall entirely, and in so doing lose a piece of English heritage? The Great Hall was so important that some board members wondered if the college could survive its loss. One timid member of the board remembered that there was a college forester on the payroll and suggested that perhaps they should seek his advice. No one really knew much about the forester. They know he managed some forest which belonged to the college, but no one had seen him at the university in years. And it was considered by most a rather anachronistic position, similar to the college swan keeper or the college fletcher. So much of the board thought that this was probably a silly suggestion, but nonetheless they summoned the forester to Oxford for a board meeting. The board explained the problem to the forester and asked him if oak timbers of the required quality and size were even available today, and if so, what would they cost? And then, to their great surprise, the forester replied, "Well, gentlemen, I was wondering when you'd ask that." It seems that when New College received its charter back in 1379, a grove of oak trees was planted on the first piece of land that was bequeathed to them. They were planted for the specific purpose of replacing the beams in New College Hall when those beams became infested with beetles, as it is known that oak always falls prey to beetles in the end. He related how the purpose of those trees had been passed down from forester to forester for 600 years. Each would tell the next, "You take care of those trees, you don't cut those oak trees. Those are for the roof of New College Hall." Well, the oak trees were cut and milled and used to replace the infested beams and restore the hall. And then acorns were sown on the land where the trees had been harvested, because as everyone knows, eventually all oaks fall prey to beetles. You know, like that college's great hall, we have something wonderful right now. It's not a great building, but a great fellowship. It too will face challenges in the future, and we don't know what those challenges will be or when they will occur. We certainly didn't anticipate a virus requiring us to completely change the way we do things and dramatically interrupt our usual stream of donations that we receive in the collection baskets as they're passed each week. But fortunately, we had some cash reserves, which have not only allowed us to continue our Sunday services and all our community events and meet our obligations to our nonprofit, they've also allowed us to go much further than that, to be able to respond very generously to the hardship that this virus has imposed on the greater community. These reserves were a blessing and wisely held as a rainy day fund. And the rain came. Our own history in this very moment demonstrates powerfully why we need an endowment. So whether or not cash reserves happen to be available, there will be funds to turn to in times of extraordinary needs. But it's not just for crisis situations that we need an endowment. We're really growing now with well over 200 members and more friends. And the potential to connect with more people who seek this kind of a spiritual home, people who are here in San Miguel, people who are in other parts of Mexico, people who are all over the US and Canada and beyond. that potential is almost unlimited. You know, we're just starting to move beyond being a congregation of all gringo retirees to one now with more Mexicans and with children and young families joining us. We have grown our staff and our numbers of committed volunteers, which has enabled us to serve our members and our friends and reach out to the greater community in new and in varied ways. Right now, an envisioning committee is thinking ahead for us, thinking about what that long view might be, and the ideas circulating are really very exciting. Some could become a reality in a fairly short time, but others will likely come after perhaps we're gone. An endowment is not just about maintaining what we have. It is a way of enabling us to be even better in the future. You know, Confucius once reminded us, people who don't think far enough ahead inevitably have worries near at hand. And truth be told, so often most of us prefer to focus on our momentary needs or our momentary enjoyment of things. You know, we do it at a personal level in our lives all the time, and even with some big things like maybe not preparing sufficiently for retirement or other major things that come to us. But you know, I think nowhere is our failure to take a long view any more clear at a societal level than it is with the issue of climate change in our time, as well as many other short-sighted political decisions that are now being made. So whether it's in our own personal life, or in the life of our planet, or our country, or in the life of our fellowship, it's not easy to take the long view, but it's so necessary. Indeed, it's much easier to just go along with things the way they've always been. And when you do that, is when you begin on a path of decline, rather than on either the road of preservation of a wonderful institution or the embrace of new and greater possibilities. Taking the long view and acting in accord with it can require some sacrifice on our part, just as those before sacrificed to leave us the various legacies they have. So how do we get there? Well, first, I think we need to think about a time beyond our own time. Most of us are in our senior years, and it's a time when it's appropriate to think about what we will pass on to future generations. Yes, to our family and our friends, but also I think it's time to think about what we can pass on to institutions and organizations that will continue to advance what we value, continue to speak to issues on which we would still like to have our voices heard, continue to create the beloved community that we have so much appreciated. We will not get to see it all, but we have known the journey, and we have a glimpse of the future that is beyond us. You know, this week, as I was thinking of this service, I thought about the biblical story of Moses. Moses led his people through the desert for 40 years in search of a promised land. Moses and most of the older people with whom he left Egypt did not get there, but their descendants did. But Moses does go to that mountain, and from the top of it gets a glimpse of the future he has worked so hard to create for his people, but will not himself enjoy. And he finds peace and just getting a glimpse of what his legacy will be. Those of us who have been blessed to live long and rewarding lives, who have been given to us in our time, are indeed fortunate to be able to contemplate how we might continue to give after we're gone. For sure, we'll live on in the lives we have touched and the good examples we've been, but we also have the opportunity to intentionally say, this is how I want to be part of the future, even generations after I'm gone. You know, it's not a morbid thought to think about your legacy, but an empowering thought. We need to embrace a spirit of generosity, not just for present causes and individuals, but towards the future. True generosity is always about giving without regard to anything that you'll receive back. When we give to projects of the moment, we do often get to witness the results of our giving. When we give to the future, it is extraordinarily selfless and trusting generosity because often we will not get to see the results. You know, generosity to the needs of the present has been a hallmark of this congregation, and I believe generosity to the future will be as well. The hymn we sang leading into the sermon is one of my favorites. It talks about how you live your life in this moment, but it ends with these words. Then, when life is done for me, let love be my legacy. Isn't that what we really all want? And does it not raise the question for all of us to ponder? What will our legacy of love look like? You know, planting those trees 600 years ago was a legacy of love for that college and for the future generations who would attend it. Those 14th century academics wanted to see this institution endure to serve for hundreds of years into the future. Just as I know we want this fellowship here in the middle of Mexico to be thriving long after we're gone. Legacies of love connect us to our past and our future. As a faith tradition, we recognize the interconnectedness with each other and with all creation. We recognize the effects of actions we take. The way we live our lives reaches beyond us. In our seventh principle, we recognize that we are part of an interconnected web of all existence. But you know what? That web is one that is not limited to the present. Its threads reach back into the past and extend our connection into the future, even when we'll not be present. In the words of one of my colleagues, Victoria Safford, we here right now are standing on the solid ground of the present, and we are leaning over time to touch the future. How will you touch the future? What will your legacy be? I hope you will leave lessons and good memories and resources, if you're able, to family and friends who will lovingly make good use of these gifts and be inspired by your teachings and examples long after you're gone. I also hope that your legacy of love will help to pass on this fellowship even better than it was when we received it to those who come after us. I hope your legacy will be supporting an organization that continues to speak up for what you value, even after you are no longer able to do so. Your gifts of time and talent and financial resources, both for the present and for the future, all contribute to the ongoing creation of a beloved community that not only exists in the present, but crosses the barriers of time. A community where those who have gone before us and those who will come after us are one with us right now. Many of us don't have great financial resources and give to this fellowship in so many other ways to help create our future. And thank you for that. But if you are able, I invite you to consider a gift now, whatever you can afford, or one made by bequest after you're gone to the UU Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende Endowment. And now, here is Steve Singer, the Endowment Committee Chair, to tell you how you can do that.
Hello again. During the past 8 weeks, you've been reading a series of articles about our Magic Fellowship presented by the Endowment Committee. The articles describe the legacy that we inherited from those who came before us, spirit of generosity. And finally, last week, I told you why I'm a Unitarian Universalist. We are a faith that asks us to demonstrate love and leave behind a place that's better than what we inherited. Today, you've heard from 3 members of the congregation. Dave has shared the importance of fellowship in creating a sense of community, whether here or away from San Miguel. Margo discussed how even small contributions can make a difference. And Bill has described, without hyperbole, how an endowment fund can change the world. We are stewards of the gifts given by others. Those who follow us will be the stewards of the gifts that we leave them. When we become members of this fellowship, we make a commitment to its future and to helping others in our community. Each week, we give to the collection basket, and each year we pledge. Both of those contributions go to a spending account that we call the operating budget. Now, after 30 years, we've created a savings account called an endowment fund to ensure the fellowship's future and fulfill its long-range mission. If you wish to join us in purposely creating a future, we've established a number of ways you can participate. You may make a current donation, predominantly in cash, but we also accept marketable securities and easily liquidated assets. Or you may make a bequest to the fellowship through your will, trust, or estate plan. You can name the fellowship as a beneficiary on an insurance policy, annuity, life insurance, pension, IRA, 401k plan. You can bequeath stock, or finally, you can leave the fellowship a valuable asset such as a home. We encourage unrestricted gifts, gifts given without condition, but within defined parameters. The board of directors may accept gifts that are restricted. Please note that all donation amounts are confidential. You may contribute via bank transfer to Frost Bank, Zelle transfer to the fellowship treasurer's email address. I know Jane would love that one. A paper check, PayPal, or a PayPal link on the UUFSMA webpage. Or you may leave securities through the UUA or donor-advised funds through the UUA. All members who contribute to the endowment fund, no matter what the size of the contribution, whether with current funds or bequests, will be enrolled as members in the legacy circle. Those who donate during the next 6 months will be identified as founding members of the legacy circle. For more information, please read this week's chapter in the series about our Magic Fellowship in the order of service and the newsletter. Or you can go to our newly redesigned webpage, UUFSMA.org. Simply click on the Stewardship tab and then on the Endowment Fund button. If you would like to discuss the Endowment Fund further, please contact me, Steve Singer, mx@gmail.com, or any of the other members listed here on the Endowment Committee. I would really like to thank Karen Woolhouse, Tricia Singer, Joanna Kafarowski, Eleanor Goodwin, and Steve Sturry for their work that they've been doing on this. Thank you very much to all.
A few weeks ago, at the funeral service for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I, and I suspect many of you, were deeply moved by mezzo-soprano Denise Graves' singing of Norah Jones' American Anthem, which poses the question, what will be our legacy? What will our children say? The response is, let them say of me, I was one who believed in sharing the blessings I received. It struck me that indeed that is what I would hope people would say of me when I'm gone. I hope you'll continue to share the blessings that you've received with this fellowship for its work in the present and in the future. Thank you for being with us today and for being part of this community. In a moment, we'll extinguish the flame in our chalice, but not the light that we carry with us. We leave our time together acknowledging that something wonderful has been planted here in San Miguel by those who came before us. A garden, if you will, of liberal religion with a commitment to social justice and to the creation of beloved community. It is time for us to make that garden grow.
We will seek a few modest little acres and build a small farm, and casting aside all vain speculations as to the meaning of this meaningless world, we will fulfill our function, working God's earth from dawn to dusk.
You've been a fool, and so have I, but come and be my wife, and let us try before we die to make some sense of life. We're neither pure nor wise nor good. We'll do the best we know. We'll build our house and chop our wood and make our garden grow and make our garden We're neither pure nor wise nor good. We'll do the best we know. We'll build a house and chop our wood and make our garden grow and make our garden grow. Any questions?